Hey everyone, Steve here again with another random video. In this video, I'm reviewing the KOTTO suction hose fume extractor. To simplify why I'm making this video, I recently came into possession of a hot air station to help me advance into more complicated projects and repair. The downside of using this tool is the increase of intoxicating fumes when hot air is constantly blown on the substance called flux that is used in soldering. I usually use a typical smoke absorber that has a carbon filter for most soldering fumes and gets the job done most of the time. But a carbon filter doesn't perform a good job at filtering flux fumes in a closed-off environment. More professional fume extractors start at high prices, with replacement filters expensive as well. So before looking into one of them, I wanted to try out this hobbyist one from KOTTO I found on Amazon that supports HEPA filters for better air quality. I wasn't expecting great results from this, but I'll try to show my thoughts on it for anyone else looking to purchase the unit. Starting with a breakdown of the absorber, I purchased the device off of Amazon for $89.99, not including tax. Included with the absorber is a 12-volt power supply, 2 carbon filters, and a single page of documentation. Right off the bat, I was disappointed because I was expecting the HEPA filters to be included with the unit, but the Amazon page didn't specify that correctly. So, I had to purchase those separately at $16.99 without tax for a pack of 2. The absorber's hose comes detached from the base of the unit and has to be inserted firmly before use. It measures 24 inches in length and is very adjustable. I was able to position the hose in multiple ways to get an idea of its range. Looking at the base of the unit, it has a relatively small footprint. On the front, there's only one knob to control the absorber. Turning the knob clockwise turns the absorber on and controls the airflow. I wish KOTTO labeled the knob better because it doesn't accurately show the range of adjustment for the airflow. For the rest of the device, there's just a vent to expel air and the socket for power. To open the unit, you just need to open the latch on the front of the device and swing upward. For demonstration, I placed the default carbon filter in there to show how easy it is to change it out. Below the filter is a piece of cardboard that I assume is a barrier between the filter and the fan because of the way the cardboard was cut. If this is the intended purpose, I think KOTTO should have used something like plastic because I almost threw this thing out, like I would expect others. Below that is the fan. According to KOTTO, this fan runs as high as 6,000 RPM, has a life expectancy of 50,000 hours, and takes in air at 52 cubic feet per minute. Before putting the absorber back together, I've switched out the carbon filter for one of the separate HEPA filters I purchased, since this was the only reason I purchased the absorber. Before getting into using the unit, I wanted to show the amount of noise this absorber makes in a room with nothing else on. My other smoke absorber was loud as well, so I wasn't expecting this unit to be silent either. But if you're a person that likes to play background music or podcasts while working, you may have a hard time listening or want to switch to headphones. To test the device out properly, I set up a couple test scenarios at my workbench to see how well it removed flux from my area. As a reminder, I'm testing with the HEPA filter, not the standard carbon filter. For a test of the fume extractor with my soldering iron, I pulled out a junk Game Boy cartridge I use as a practice repair board. I purposely broke a trace on the board to give myself something to work on. I tried my best to record myself at my workbench with the fume extractor next to me sucking in soldering fumes, but it doesn't really show up on camera, so you'll have to take my word on my experience. From using the device, I found it best to place the nozzle of the hose about 6 to 8 inches away from what I was working on. For fan speed, I found at half speed worked with how I had the nozzle positioned. No soldering fumes reached my face and went directly into the absorber. In terms of removing the flux smell from a typical soldering iron project, it didn't really change the air quality compared to my previous smoke absorber. I even left the absorber running a couple minutes after finishing to find a difference in air quality, but found nothing. This wasn't a deal breaker though, since this wasn't my intended purpose. Overall, I think it did a better job at redirecting fumes thanks to the hose, and I'm satisfied with the test. For the real test, I wanted to use my hot air station with the smoke absorber since this would require more flux, hence more fumes in the workspace. For a test project using the same junk cartridge, I plan to remove and reinstall the memory bank controller chip on the board. When recording this, there was no visible fumes that could be seen, so again, you'll have to take my word on the experience. I kept the position of the nozzle in the same position and still kept it about 6 to 8 inches away from the cartridge. I had my hot air station at 500 degrees Fahrenheit with 60% airflow. For the absorber fan speed, I increased it to full speed due to the flux fumes starting to build up from the heating of the chip. While performing both the removal and the reinstall, a large buildup of flux fumes occurred as I expected, but it was noticeably better to work thanks to this smoke absorber compared to my previous one. Even though I cut the footage here for time purposes, I didn't get overwhelmed with fumes and was able to finish my task without leaving the room to allow fumes to dissipate. Although one complaint I would have is I had to keep the absorber running for an extra 5 to 10 minutes after finishing to really remove most of the fumes from my workbench. After that amount of time, there was only a faint smell of flux but not enough to nauseate someone. This test overall proved its value to me over my previous bench fan. And for anyone curious, the cartridge still worked after all I put it through. For my final thoughts on the absorber, it did its job for extracting flux fumes from the air around my workbench. It definitely made a difference with the hot air station compared to a previous experience where I had to leave the room due to how much the fumes had built up. Although I didn't notice any air quality difference when testing with a soldering iron, I wasn't really testing it for that situation, but I'm sure the HEPA filters help. Compared to my previous bench fan, I believe it took in the solder fumes better thanks to the adjustable hose. One thing that does concern me is the longevity of the HEPA filters. I normally only do soldering work once every 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how many projects I take on at once. The carbon and HEPA filters only last so long with moderate use. I feel confident I can get by with a pack of 2 HEPA filters for a year before purchasing more based on my use case. But for someone that does this kind of hobby more than me, or even someone that makes a career out of micro soldering, I don't believe this smoke absorber will be right for them. This is clearly aimed at a hobbyist or amateur like myself, and I would only recommend it to those viewers out there potentially looking into this product. So, for those skipping to the end of the video, here is a quick layout of my pros and cons of the device. For me, I'll be keeping the unit for now to replace my previous bench fan, but I'll always be keeping my eye on the market for more powerful fume extractors. If none of the cons dissuade you, I would suggest picking this up. So that'll do it for me in this video. This is Steve signing off, and stay safe everyone.